14 residents.
Buildings.
Units,
Yeah.
well, yeah.
But did they say what they?
I don't know the I don't know. I think it might.
I swear, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's there.
Serious. I think they referenced it.
Yeah, she said that.
That's why it's.
Yeah, but we never practiced. So I emailed and you found the information and then I got the, and then she emailed.
We're almost at 6.
So we didn't have to take our time.
I just, it's good.
Speaking to one of the public hearings, please come up and sign in so that we can hand that to our commissioners.
I was going to be one, but it's a bunch of lots. If I knew it was going to be this busy, I would have dressed up. You're always so pretty though. Earrings and necklaces and everything. It's nice. Colors that just.
Yeah, I think a little bit more what it is. The fact that
Well, I think a lot of the people that I know here are the places to age people, probably just waiting to support it, and then there may be neighbors around that,
So you guys gonna have a roll call?
I don't know, but there are always people running.
I don't,
But it doesn't look like a lot of them are signing up to speak.
it's here somewhere.
Oh yeah, we only need 4,
Give them one.
including the chairman.
Let me check. Okay, it's really easy. Do you have the card? No. Did you save them as PDFs? Okay.
I don't know, we'll see. Another minute. Kenny could come in at the last minute, and Aaron is back in the country, so I don't know.
minimum we need, 5.
4. We're good. Yeah, we're good. We got the usual suspects up here. Oh, here's Dan. Good. He always comes in at the very last minute. I think Kenny too. Yep.
So, which one's your presentation? And this is for both?
Hi, how are you?
Okay. Okay, and then I'll just pull it up
Want to
now.
hold them to 3
And so
minutes
this,
tonight?
That's what I just talked to Bill about. Yeah, somebody keep track of time up there.
yeah.
I put the clock up, can't they?
I asked him if they could, and she wasn't sure. So I think Bill was just gonna kind of.
Well, and I can set a timer on my phone.
Bill's gonna do it and give us a 10-second or whatever it is.
Just did that. Oh, you know what? He just saved that. I'm gonna do the same as.
Be here for a while.
Wish I brought the big one.
Water bottle. I thought it was
That's
some dessert bars.
Right? Dessert bars, yeah.
Like, no,
Right?
don't eat that.
Right?
I did eat before. I usually wait till I got.
I did not. I had a snack.
makes you like, I don't even have it.
I don't like to eat
Sign
a
in
big
if I
dinner right
wanted
before a meeting because it's
So-
so heavy.
Oh, I had a really like.
What did you have?
What did I have for
I'll just have to
dinner?
go back to the
Baked haddock, broccoli and rice. Leftovers though.
That's okay.
No, because
Leftovers
it
are
won't, it
excellent.
won't open.
That's
Yeah, it's
Where'd you get the haddock?
so
Got it on the way back from.
Where were you?
that. Get out of here.
Back here? And where?
There's Kenny.
Pittsburgh to Upper State.
I tried to convert. That's what I tried. And
A week of, I drove out
Any-
with my niece
well,
from Denver to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it was.
you know, so Glenn,
And then I had to,
can you save your
drive
power
vehicles,
lifting
pack dishes.
PDF?
Well, yeah, I'm not much of a heavy lifter anymore. All the other stuff.
I see you have a PowerPoint in the folder. I can't open PowerPoint on this computer.
Is she
Can you
moving
save
just
it as
for
a
a job or
PDF?
for school? Or
And I can open it. It's in that same folder. No flybys. Well, you could.
Change of station.
We could have John maybe run around the room to give the impression of flying text.
Doesn't seem like we're live yet.
Nice area up there. It's in the middle.
right? Where is it?
Dancing Bears too, right?
Where is it near?
Got Dancing Bears too, right? In the east of Watertown.
Yeah, there was.
Well, shoot, then why am I here?
Oh,
Oh, Watertown, right. My brother, before he moved to
Are you
Florida,
guys,
as
how we doing over there?
eventually do.
You guys ready to get going?
Padilla and.
You guys ready?
Oneonta, which is between.
Are we live?
Binghamton and Albany,
Are we on?
kind of in that pretty estate area.
I think so. I never got them saying it's on. Let me stop and
House on an acre with garage, $200,000
Yeah.
there.
Oh, yeah.
That's how far,
I think we are.
But there you are.
yeah, and you got taxes.
Where's the agenda
New
go?
York is just stupid.
Yep.
That's why the
Oh,
pricing
so-
is wrong. Property
So
tax,
is
Why did it?
outrageous.
sales tax.
Oh, here's Jean. Got a lot of places to age people here.
Shit, it's a PowerPoint. Yeah. This is Bill Hussey gave this to me. I need to. Where's Bill?
I'm not so excited about driving anywhere for a while,
I get it, right?
although I did fly back. But,
What, so your niece had the car?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just helped her out. I didn't know anything about it. She's lived here for,
Try? I don't even know what my account is.
you are.
Okay, work around having issues.
What's that? I work for a big construction company.
Okay.
It's not doing it.
We actually both know Adriana Dianda. I had lunch with her today.
On Monday.
Sounds like you do a little bit of everything. A little bit of
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I did see that. Oh, that's
And they're
ridiculous.
working on 50 up to Maysville too, on the other side. Yeah.
And then,
Repaving it, which is
like,
good.
I mean, we came in late Saturday night. And
What part of town do you live
on 285, and then the traffic going north through was stopped in Fairplay.
Right? Oh, I heard about that. What was it? Was it the light?
Didn't look like anything.
Yeah?
Didn't look like anything.
They're doing that crazy work.
I think I might have to
But
look.
it was in kids. So I don't know, it was a bunch of recreational vehicles and a grafter and,
Oh, yeah. I only ask. I don't have business.
And I don't. I do feel like too should be able to this one.
I know when I first started.
It's both of our alternates on everything. Should we just say that at the
Everybody votes.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's gonna let me go to my. No, it's go to click on email, but I don't.
No idea.
I think it's gonna want a bunch of logins and MFA.
find it really interesting.
home, ate lunch,
At least that's what the
was gonna
Facebook.
do this. And I better go take a nap here.
I want to move it to that screen because the
Part
other
of my
screen.
life now. Yeah.
I think that'd be some pretty serious jet lag.
I didn't realize they were coming.
Right?
Yeah, I do my own investments, so I
Over time, some of the people with the ADU idea, and they seem pretty favorable.
Good, I mean.
Especially if we did something clever, like said, you do it for 10 years and then drop.
this one has.
Or something.
Well, I can't do that.
So
I
hopefully
don't
you get it
trade
or
often.
sell it, you have to.
I've been in this situation before many times.
Concerns,
I procrastinated cashing in
and only
on
for
all
the,
my
for the
plus-ups.
fractions or the five or
And
less. 'Cause I
that
don't want-
procrastination has paid off in the last couple of years.
So I would like to
Normally,
bring
I
that
would
back
have
up.
just taken it and put it into some fixed instrument. PowerPoint on the bike ride is a full one here, so.
I think we're close, folks. We're just trying to get the PowerPoint going, I think, for the presentations. Thanks for being patient.
Yourselves.
That's data won't let us.
I want to ask if people have signed up, if they want to talk.
I think Bill kind of announced it. Most people had come in.
May not have heard them.
Somebody just came to support.
No.
I guess it's worth repeating. If you would like to speak tonight, there are a couple different hearings. Sign-ups are here. If you haven't signed up and you would like to speak, please come on up and sign up.
The time.
Good idea.
Sorry, folks, technical difficulties.
Thank you.
Oh.
Just put that PDF.
Let me check.
Really was. Exceptional.
Which, I don't see which one it is. Oh, wait, sorry, this one is.
And the zoning,
Development plan.
Yeah.
that's right. I think there'll be a lot of discussion on
Yeah.
the zoning.
Maybe, but it's consistent. We'll see from the,
Oh, shoot.
Just a minute.
Do you want to do that?
I'll explain why.
Or some, either of you while I
Wait to hear it.
get this
Chapter
on.
and verse,
Yeah, okay, cool.
or at least there's,
Call to order though.
Yeah,
Good to go.
Okay,
all right.
sounds like we are ready to go. And with that, we'll call this planning commission meeting to order. Roll call.
Malay,
Here.
Romer,
Here.
Kribel,
Here.
Dockery,
Here.
Colby,
Here.
Duringson,
Curse.
Bush,
Does that mean here?
Layton,
Here.
Almquist,
Here.
Van Nimwingen, Dunleavy,
Here,
Hodges,
here.
Armstrong,
Here.
Okay. With that, we have minutes to approve from the June 24th, 2024 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from our June 24 meeting. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from June 24th, 2024. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unscheduled citizens, is there anybody here to speak to anything that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Any amendments to this agenda?
Nope.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll open the public hearings. The first one being the recommendation on proposed Salida Quality Farms LLC, Meadowlark Drive annexation.
Good evening, Commissioners and everyone in the public. I will be presenting the two items associated with the Salida Quality Farms LLC, Meadowlark Drive annexation and zoning. The first part is the annexation. The applicant, Salida Quality Farms LLC, represented by James L. Treat, has submitted a complete application to annex the 43.02 acre property located off Meadowlark Drive between County Road 120 and County Road 140.
Could you pause for a second? Please. We had a webinar. The webinar inadvertently stopped. I need to restart it.
Just like watching a movie at my house.
Who's got the remote?
Okay. Okay.
What happened? There we go.
That was weird.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak with other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready for your attendees to hear you, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. I'll start over, just for the record.
Okay.
The applicant, Salida Quality Farms LLC, represented by James L. Treat, has submitted a complete application to annex the 43.02 acre property located off Meadowlark Drive between County Road 120 and County Road 140, adjacent to the western edge of Angel View subdivision, along with portions of County Roads 120 and 140, totaling 48.98 acres. This is a series annexation, which means that in the first parcel, which is Plat A1, is annexed, and that allows for the contiguity to be achieved for the second parcel, A2. So both parcels in whole are achieved contiguity for the annexation in accordance with Colorado Revised Statutes 3112-104. Next slide. Or two slides, actually. The process is a state-mandated annexation process, and that is being followed in accordance with the steps shown here, and according to state statute. The city council did act on the resolution of substantial compliance on the 2nd and set the council's hearing date for August 20th of 2024. And noticing will follow in the paper, and the additional items will be presented. Slide. The subject property lies within the municipal services area, meets contiguity requirements, and can be served by city police and fire, and is a natural extension of the city's municipal boundary. Slide. Comments from referral agencies indicated that additional parks and open space dedication or fees in lieu may be required to supplement the proposed 4-acre park dedication that is included on the draft plat. Appropriate sizing of stormwater facilities will be needed. Salida schools will accept fees in lieu of land, and a traffic impact statement will be needed to address any future major development proposals that was requested by the county. Next slide. So given that the proposed annexation complies with applicable state and city standards and state mandates, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend City Council to approve the proposed annexation subject to the conditions listed in the motion. And at that time, you can have, state the motion and proceed.
Okay.
And if there's any questions.
Any
Cory's
questions
first.
for staff? Question?
I had one question for staff. Is there a requirement for the applicant to submit at some point a financial assessment of any impact to the town? I know you said that there will be a traffic study, but I was curious as to how we as a board ascertain those kinds of impacts.
Right. I'm not aware of any specific requirement for that.
As far as financial impacts, I mean, the annexation impact report that will be created will outline just, general requirements and anticipated impacts, but it's not down to, since we don't have a proposal at this point.
Right.
We don't really see any financial impacts at this point. That would be down the line when they actually come back with a proposal. And that will be included in the staff report.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for staff.
Sure.
I have a question for staff. Do you know, I know that Mr. Treat, in his letter to us, or someone suggested that we needed, or I think it was the county planning department, recommended that we have a traffic study.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be something that would be attached to an annexation?
Again, that's dependent on development because you can't generate
Right,
traffic
so that would be
numbers
something
until
that when
you-
it came
yeah.
back to us, or when they did a development
Right.
plan, that would be
Yep.
when that would happen?
Mhm.
Okay, just checking.
Any other questions? Sure, we can come back. All right, great. Is the applicant here wanting to come up and speak to this?
Good evening. I'm Dee
Could you-
Dubin, and...
Could you bring that microphone down a little
Okay,
bit?
speak into the mic.
Here, let's put this down a little bit.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you. Hello, I am Dee Dubin, and I'm one of the co-chairs of Places to Age, and I'm here to support the annexation that's in front of
I'm
you.
sorry, we're not doing public comment just yet. Is that what you were up?
No, I am part of the
Part of the applicant.
Okay.
organization
okay,
that's presenting.
All right, great. Sorry,
Okay.
continue.
Fine. Okay, on June 5th, the application to annex 43 acres of Salida Quality Farms LLC, Meadowlark Drive, was submitted to the city of Salida. The area also includes approximately 6 acres of adjacent right-of-way for total annexation of an area of approximately 49 acres. This area is a prime location to extend the city limits as it conforms to the county's future land use plan and is within the current municipal service area of the city of Salida. As part of the annexation, the owner is dedicating 4 acres of parkland on the east end as agreed to with city, in discussions with city staff. And this portion is adjacent to the .86 acre proposed park by the neighboring Angel View development. Together, this creates a nice, almost 5-acre park for the western part of the city, and this is a priority with the Salida Parks and Recreation Department, as detailed in their recreation master plan. In our discussions with city staff, we see this as a multi-use park developed to serve all residents, while acknowledging this part of the city has a larger elderly population. You will note in the conceptual plan shown that additional roads and trails to connect the major roadways of County Road 120 and County Road 140 have been shown. We anticipate developers will include even more walkways and bike paths to enhance a mixed-use pedestrian nature of the area. Also shown on the surveys, plats, and concept plans are suggested utility connections for water and sewer. These were developed by our engineer and the city public works director. Bill Hussey, our engineer, will address these shortly. This is an annexation and rezoning application. We request R3 zoning to allow for a variety of residential development. This is consistent with the adjacent development. And a current intended use is to develop 8 acres, which will provide housing for seniors needing assisted living and memory care services, potentially along with building independent living units. The owner of the 43 acres, Mr. Treat, has agreed to donate 10 acres to Places to Age, a local nonprofit organization committed to bringing assisted living and memory care housing to our community. The need for such a facility is well documented, and now we have a nonprofit organization intent on meeting that need. We thank Mr. Treat for his support of this development.
Hello, my name is Andy Bruno. I'm the other co-chair of Places to Age. I wanted to make some brief comments. As Dee indicated, 10 acres of this annexation will be be donated to Places to Age. I wanted to frame that for you. We've done this many times for staff and for city council, but we'd like to do it for you. Today, there are over 5,400 individuals that are 65 plus in our county. That's 27% of the population. The state demographer indicates that by 2030, there will be 30% of the county will be 65 plus. By 2050, per the state demographer, there will be over 8,000 individuals in this age category. Currently, older community members that need assisted living or memory care services are forced to move out of the county. The mission of Places to Age is to bring assisted living and memory care facilities and services to Chaffee County. We have been working closely with CCCF, Chaffee County Community Foundation. They've been a great partner. We are now our own 501c3 dedicated to providing a range of housing options for older adults. By building assisted living and memory care facilities, we will be catering to the unique healthcare needs of older people by providing a safe and supportive environment for those requiring assistance with daily activities and memory-related challenges. Of the proposed annexation, as we've said, 10 acres will be donated and conveyed to Places to Age to support our mission. I would like to publicly thank Mr. Treat for his ongoing kindness and generosity. 2 of our designated 10 acres will be dedicated to parkland, in addition to another 2 acres from Mr. Treat, per negotiations with city staff. The remaining 8 acres will be used for building assisted living memory care, potentially independent living units, and workforce housing. Upon annexation, our next steps are to work with industry experts to work out the economics of our approach. to help us build out developmental and operational pro formas. This specific 8-acre location is ideal for our project as it is within 1.3 miles from the hospital. We'd like to really briefly tell you about our progress over the last 14 months since our nonprofit's inception. We've received over $30,000 from the community through CCCF. We received a $75,000 grant from Next 50. We have made it to the next round of the proposed congressional direct spending request through both Hickenlooper and Bennett's office. In this process, we received great letters of support from the City of Salida, City of BV, County Commissioners, and Chaffey County Public Health. We are currently working through an MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, with the City of Salida. We are also working through an MOU with the hospital. We are formalizing our partnership with CHT and CHA in support of workforce housing development. We have RFPs out to a number of industry experts that can help us develop this concept. We've been working with two key industry players, Vivage and Capella. We continue to develop our partnership with Colorado Mountain College to help support their healthcare curriculum. We have been actively working with Chaffey's Age Strong Coalition, Chaffey County Public Health, and UACOG. We are an all-volunteer organization that has made significant progress in the last 14 months. We are dedicated to this project.
My name is Bill Hussey. I'm a civil engineer contracted with Places to Age to assist with the technical aspects of the annexation process. And just want to echo what Dee and Andy said and thank Jim Treat for the generous offers that he's making, 8 acres for senior living and 4 acres for a city park. And the other interesting thing about that is you're not hearing tonight some request to slash the inclusionary housing or some other thing in half or anything like that. So really appreciate Jim, really appreciate the group of volunteers I'm working with, Dee and Andy and Bob Grether, whose plan this is for the most part. That it's just been my job to really put it into electronic drawings and make it pretty. And so thank you to all of those folks. I want to go over quickly just some of the technical aspects of the annexation, and actually also the just the fact that this parcel has been identified for a long time for annexation. If you could go to the next slide, please. Kind of go through. So this municipal services area that you first heard Carolyn mention and have heard other folks mention, this was decided in 2010, so even more than 14 years ago. It had been decided, and really what that municipal services area means is that had Mr. Treat gone to Chaffey County and said, hey, I would love to chop this into 4-acre lots and build some houses. Per that IGA, actually, the county agreed not to accept that application. Now, per that IGA, it has to come to the city, recognizing that being on the edge of the city and being a natural extension, it should be developed with the city's interests in mind, and that's our goal, is to make this a great neighborhood, a great addition to the city. Next slide, please. Moving on to the county comprehensive plan, that was a 2020 document, identified this parcel as mixed residential, which is their highest intensity residential zone. And what I'm pretty sure I'm seeing is that the portion of this property that's south of Meadowlark Drive is actually part of the municipal services area, the majority of it, or municipal planning area, sorry, which means that the county could accept an application for that part of it, but it's still identified in the IGA as a parcel that's likely to be annexed to the city. So anyway, in the county's 2020 FLUM, they identified this entire parcel is their highest intensity residential designation. Next slide, please. And correct me if I'm wrong about that. I saw that today and I didn't have time to check it with anyone. I apologize. Moving on to the city of Salida, Flum, it's similarly designated for the highest intensity residential neighborhoods, and that's a 2023 document. So as time goes by, the county and the city have had the same intentions for this property is what I'm attempting to show with these slides. I'll hold my zoning comments for later on. If you could go to the next one, please. Master plan, you see that on the north and south on County Road 140 and 120, we touch multi-use trails, and the plan is to provide a network. If you go to the next slide, the green lines, there are 8-foot multi-use paths rather than a normal sidewalk. So we're connecting those networks. Angel View to our east is going to do the same thing. There's going to be a network of 8-foot concrete paths through there. Is going to create a really nice network of potential loops in this area. In addition, the 4-acre park, the 4 acres from this annexation, along with, I think it's about 0.8 in Angel View, it's a 4.8 acre park. And just for comparison, Riverside Park is 2.9 acres and Alpine Park is 2.6. We do have some bigger properties like Marvin, but that's all baseball. And we have Centennial, which is a lot of aquatic center and parking. So in terms of something that's parkland, this is going to be the biggest thing that we would have. Next slide, please. This is just we have the pedestrian circulation with the sidewalks all through the development and the wider paths. This is also going to provide more connectivity between County Road 140 and County Road 120. And that's good for not just pedestrians, but vehicles, that if we have road work, we're not going to be using the LDS Church parking lot anymore to get around that intersection is going to be a really nice thing. And, Angel View probably gets done before this one. And that's going to put, maybe more traffic than we'd like onto Shepherd Drive when that's done. So it's important that we continue to build out this grid of connectivity. It has benefits also, if a water main breaks in one of these connections, we have 3 or 4 other connections that are still flowing. If a fire should freakishly happen, well, there's a water main broken, something of that nature. So these are some, beyond the senior living and beyond the large park, some of the peripheral benefits to the city. If we can move on to the next one, please. As you heard, in David Lady, in his comments that he wrote, the water and sewer are nearby. They can be looped through. There's another small, kind of fringe benefit of having this higher pressure water get built down onto County Road 120. Currently there is water main in County Road 120, but it's the low pressure zone that, the same pressure zone that serves us here. And that being 200 feet higher, those folks need booster pumps up there that are tapped into the city's water. So that's another benefit. Stormwater will absolutely need to be verified. We're showing some stormwater just at the northeast, the little triangle piece there, and at the southeast corner of the property, and those are not big enough for the entire 43 acres. There's going to be more stormwater detention spread throughout the development. That's all I had for the annexation portion of the hearing. If you have any questions, happy to take those, or for Dee or Andy or anyone else.
Any questions for Bill at this point? No?
I have one. I'm not sure who it's for, but are the roadways that they mentioned, that the county planning department mentioned, included in this parcel? The CR 120 and 140, the city should annex the appropriate portions?
Yeah.
Assuming that's included in what's been...
They are included in the annexation plats. Yep.
So that doesn't need to be...
You can see it in this, the 120
in the south is included as part of the annexation, and 140 in the north.
So it doesn't need to be called out specifically. It's already wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I did have a question, if I could. Maybe that you may need to answer it, Bill. So when it's in a, this area is in a municipal service area, with regard to water and sewer capacity and uses, does that mean that it's been evaluated with a certain density for purposes of long-term planning in water and sewer use?
That is correct, yeah. So when these plans and that IGA was put together in 2010, it took into account the maximum density build-out of existing lands
Yeah.
and the water allotments that we have, as well as pressurization schedules and everything else. So that's why this whole area is included in the municipal services area. Bill did point out an interesting point that on the map, on the IGA, that lower section's actually in the planning area. I think that might actually be an error, because this is technically all one parcel. There's a parcel join between the northern portion and the southern portion across Meadowlark Drive. Meadowlark Drive is actually an easement, not a right-of-way. And I would be very shocked that they would ever split a parcel up. So I think that may have been an error. We'll check into that piece. Regardless, David Lady has not expressed any concerns with the ability to service it.
And just as a follow-up, would that be based on a density that would be more like R2 or R3?
I can't say off the top of my head because, they were utilizing language and anticipated build-outs from our comprehensive plan, which was, the comprehensive plan, probably the 2008 version at that time. But it did anticipate, a fair amount of density out in this side of town.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions for Bill or staff at this point? Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to the public input portion. If you're signed up, can somebody grab the sign-up sheet for me?
Sheets.
We'll note with the volume this evening, we will be limiting comment to 3 minutes. So please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll indicate when that comes up. All right. Bob Linneman?
Can I ask a couple questions before my 3-minute comment time comes, so I'm clear on a couple
You can
things?
state some questions and we can address them. We can't have a kind of question-answer period if that's what you're...
Well, I'll just give you, for example, and you can tell me if it's appropriate or not. You just clarified that the annexation would include County Road 120 and 140, is that correct? Does it include, because the parcel of land south of Meadowlark Drive, you just indicated you're not sure if that's included or not, or if it's in the planning stage. I'm just wondering, is Meadowlark Drive going to be part of this annexation, or is it going to go right up to the north end and stop? That's a question I'm wondering about, and I don't know if that's clear or not. It's not in my mind.
That's included.
Would somebody, maybe if does the applicant Bill, do you? Okay.
Okay. Well, that clarifies one thing. I'll just go to comments then. I live in Meadowlark Estates, and the concern obviously is the density of this proposal, and there's so many unanswered questions in this. I hear figures on a 4-acre park, a 1.8-acre park, a 10-acre donation from Jim Treat for parkland, and I don't know what's the real number on parkland. And it sounded like they're going to want to put the parkland on the east side of the annexation. And if you put the high density all the way up to the property line of Meadowlark, it's going to look hideous. You're going to have concrete structures like Angel View right up to 2-acre parcels. There's no blend. And I'm wondering why can't, and nothing's been determined definitely on where the park is going to be. They're proposing it's on the east side, and I think you'd get a lot less visual negative impact if you could use that buffer between the annexation and Meadowlark, put it there so that it's not just solid buildings going right up to 2-acre lots with single-family homes on it. So it's just, I can't imagine, and I don't know if any consideration's been given to property values. I mean, I'm not going to argue that this project is needed. It's definitely needed in the county. The question is the scale and location. And from the city, the county, and everybody's planning viewpoint, this is perfect because you can hook up to the utilities of Salida, and I get that as well. But is the density appropriate? And could it be somewhere else without being such an eyesore to the planning aspect of this? So that's my concern, and the fact that it could impact property values. Is there no consideration made for anybody's property value, or is it just, oh, we need this, let's do it, and we don't care how it might negatively impact somebody? So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
John Barnholt?
Good evening. I wasn't really prepared to talk, but I said I was going to do it. I also live in Meadowlark Estates. And I just got to, you know, I'm not anti-development. I'm just more pro-smart development. I fully support the aging in place concept because it's much needed, and I'm not all that far away from maybe needing that someday, so it's going to be pretty convenient for me. I understand that this is just these are concepts and subject to change, and it is a little bit daunting, maybe going what Bob said, that I got 3 blocks of considered housing that's going to cover my entire east end of my property. I was watching the fireworks the other day, and I'm going, am I going to not be able to see S Mountain, you know, with this? And that's a personal, it's my issue. So what I would like to understand is what is R3 zoning? What does that mean specifically? There's a ditch that runs through there. There's a gas line that runs through there. What are the setbacks? So I can, you know, is it going to be, as Bob said, right up against my property, right up against the ditch, which would be 30 feet from my house? Or you know, what are the setbacks? How do I stay involved? How do I get involved in a positive way? And how do I stay informed and of this process? Because once again, I knew the rooftops were going to be coming eventually, and now it looks like they are, and I want to kind of understand that impact and influence what we can and what we're ability to make it smart development and attractive development, and not just blocks of houses that are all of a sudden put up against 2-acre properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Dittenber? I'm murdering the names tonight, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Betsy Dittenber. I'm the Executive Director of the Chaffee County Community Foundation. I just want to share my support of the project and give my gratitude to both the Places to Age Board, who has been working tirelessly on this for a very long time, and the city staff, who I know who have been big problem solvers and solution finders in this process that got us up to this point. And I heard some concerns earlier about, how to be involved in the process. And I want to say that this group, I've been so impressed with just how responsive they've been to the community and how they've been able to incorporate just so many different concerns and levels of involvement. And so I'm sure that any folks that want to continue to be involved can do that with them. I want to express confidence in their financial plan as the fiscal agent. Up until very recently, I've been really impressed with not only the financial support, but the level of grants from really respected organizations they've been able to secure and will hopefully continue to secure as they move forward in this. And so I hope that you approve the annexation today to get this really critical resource available for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Michelle Pujol?
Hi, everyone. I also live at Meadowlark Estates, and
we have been completely behind the, I always say it wrong, places for age?
Places
Of age, to age. Completely, we know that the county needs it. My concern, going back to what some of the other people said, is the zoning. And it's the same issue that I saw when we did the one on 140, that was taught next to, I think, the 5-acre lots, is that I feel like we're going from 2-acre lot, I mean, we bought there because of the views, because we were right outside of the city in the county. There were reasons we bought, and we knew that at some point some annexation would come. But to put at the edge of the city, right tied to all of these 2, 4-acre, some farmland, to put apartment buildings and, duplexes and triplexes, it doesn't make any sense for anybody, but especially for us who have already been there, who have been good stewards of the county, and we feel like we've been left behind. I am very frustrated because I feel like this is going to happen whether we want it to or not, because I saw what happened over at 140, and I wanted to voice my argument against that zoning. That is my only concern. I understand we're going to have I get all of the other stuff, and we can live with that, but that is the one thing that many of the people in the states are going to be very upset about. So that's my comments.
All right, thank you. As we move forward into our discussion, we won't touch on the zoning portion in this part of our discussion. We'll just be talking about the annexation itself. And we've heard your comments, but we will be moving on into the zoning discussion after the annexation. So just to let you know, thank you. All right. So if there's no one else, is there anyone online?
Would either of the people online like to speak? If so, you're muted. Okay. Okay, nobody's raised their hand or said
Okay.
anything, so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public input portion and close the public hearing and move to commissioner discussion. Want to start? Anything? Brian?
Pretty straightforward to me.
Dan, did you have something?
No questions.
Ready for a motion then?
Ready for a motion if you guys are,
Mr. Chairman, hearing you're ready for a motion, I hereby make that motion to recommend City Council approve the proposed Salida Quality Farms LLC annexation as it meets the findings of fact for annexation, subject to the following conditions to be included in the annexation agreement. 1, all proposed development shall comply with the provisions of the municipal code. And 2, a minimum of 4 acres of park and open space generally consistent with the location and configuration adjacent to Angel View subdivision as shown on the concept plan submitted with the annexation application shall be dedicated prior to development of the parcel. Such dedication shall not preclude any requirements for additional park and open space dedication or fees in lieu associated with future development of the property. Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to recommend to city council to approve the annexation. Is there any further discussion?
Layton,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Derwingson,
Not here.
Oh. Bomer,
Yes.
Foley.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. All right, with that, we will move on to the recommendation on proposed R3 zoning for the Salida Quality Farms LLC, Meadowlark Drive.
Thank you. Just going to pull up the rest of the presentation here. So this request is to zone the total of 48.98 acres to R3 high-density residential. You can go to the next slide. The property is currently zoned residential in Chaffee County. The majority of the properties to the north, south, and west remain in Chaffee County and are zoned residential, with the exception of the properties south of County Road 120, which are zoned rural. Properties to the east are primarily within the city limits and are zoned R3 high-density residential and R2 medium-density residential. Next slide. The R3 zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan in that the future land use map indicates a mixture of variable and higher efficiency neighborhoods. The proposed annexation lies within the municipal services area and will accommodate the higher densities. A proposed 8-foot wide shared use path network is included in the concept plans. The proposed R3 designation is generally consistent with the zoning found in the adjacent properties and would continue the surrounding patterns of development. Next slide. In addition, the proposed zoning is consistent with the purpose of the zone district and has the capability for providing relatively high-density residential developments, which are needed to address housing demand and affordability. While the underlying zoning of some adjacent properties is R2, the proposed R3 zoning allows greater flexibility for providing a range of housing types, such as those preliminarily outlined in the Places to Age senior housing development, and more compact development with densities that could help preserve a greater percentage of open space. The proposed zoning is occurring because of the requirement to zone the property when annexed into the city in accordance with Section 16450 of the Land Use and Development Code. And that is the end of my short presentation on this subject. Do you have any questions for staff?
Questions?
I have a question, and it relates to some of the guidance in the comprehensive plan. And did a little bit of research ahead of time because I was concerned about this. And the policy under natural surroundings is to maintain passive experience of openness in rural land surrounding the city that will accommodate ongoing agricultural use. And then it goes on to say the action in the comp plan is to encourage architectural, agricultural, and low-density residential development in open lands within the municipal planning area around the city. Given that, how do we reconcile, that particular part of the comp plan with trying to optimize the use of this particular property, given that there are options in zoning R2, R3?
I think it's up for the commission to kind of draw those lines with when there's areas and other goals that you feel are more important to observe and reflect in these zonings. It is shown in the future land use map as R2 or R3. As I mentioned, the higher densities do allow more flexibility if you want to cluster some development, which often elderly housing facilities do need to cluster things in order to keep them compact and affordable. And also the notion of independent elderly housing units might be smaller. It's building additional units or a higher number of units is also a more affordable way to go and addresses the city's goals of affordability. But certainly when the proposals come in, staff will be very cognizant of the need to reflect a buffer adjacent to the Meadowlark subdivision development and to the south where it's more rural. And that can be reflected in future development proposals that we would then assess.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I think the thing that bugged me was in the staff report, there was a statement in there relative to that the comp plan indicated that this type of growth should maximize density, and I don't think that's consistent with the comp plan in these particular areas.
Okay, do you have a question with that, or, because we can get on to comments, I think we should get to questions.
Yeah, we can do that later. I just wanted to continue that now and then leave that for discussion amongst us later.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we required to zone this whole parcel the same?
Yeah, it's because it is one legal parcel. It does have to receive one singular zoning at this point, within 90 days of annexation.
So it would be possible if we thought that, I'll call split zoning would be appropriate, to table the zoning proposal, assuming that Mr. Treat can transfer the 10 acres to places to age within 90 days, we then could take up the zoning proposal, and it would be then 2 separate parcels and could be zoned separately. I'm not even saying I'm recommending that, I'm just asking, is that something that could happen?
I mean, technically, it would have to go through the minor subdivision process and have that effective prior to you taking up the zoning request. And since that needs to be in effect within 90 days, I'm not sure that timing would work.
A minor subdivision stops with us, correct?
Correct.
So it would seem we have 6 15-day segments to stay within 90 days. Okay.
But we could also not do subdivision, but we don't have to decide on zoning tonight necessarily.
We have to do it within 90 days.
Right.
Yeah.
Within 90.
So it seems to me that if we don't decide the zoning tonight, that sets back all the plans in action, because you can't just say, well, we're going to table this until something else happens and then come back. And I mean, what I guess I'm wondering is if it were zoned, if the parcel were zoned one thing, let's just say for the sake of argument, R2, and then places of age at that point were to come back to us with a planned development, could that then change the zoning for that specific development? The places, the 8 acres that they're left with, could that be rezoned? It could override the underlying zoning, and they could then have an R3 if that's the purpose of, if that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that is one option. Another option might be, for instance, you have an underlying or initial zoning of R2, and then they would come forth, for instance, with a major subdivision that would subdivide the parcel, and then they would ask for a rezoning of certain parcels within that to accommodate the level of density that
And that
is
could
desired.
happen. And that would be part of the development agreement? Part of the major subdivision, but I mean, I guess I'm a little bit.
They'd be 2 separate processes, which both major impact review, so you could bring that all together, the major subdivision and the rezone request all together.
And that would not have to be for the entire 48 or 49 acres. That would be for whatever parcel, say, for example, the 8 acres, coming back to us?
Well, you still need to, you need to incorporate the entirety of the annexed parcel. And the number of lots created out of that could differ. It doesn't have to be a major subdivision. It could be a minor subdivision, for instance, where they just take out that 8 acres.
So I don't know if this is more comment or I'm going to address it to staff. So when staff, sorry, Carolyn. When, let's say, for example, we were to zone this, whatever we zone it, and then the Treats donate the land to places to age, does that not then become a whole separate parcel that can be treated completely separately?
It needs to be platted. It needs to go through the platting process, which is the subdivision process, passed by resolution.
Okay, and that
prior to
then
it being able to be zoned differently.
So it's always possible to zone higher density from lower density. So if you were to zone the whole thing R3, it would be really hard to go back then and zone some of it R2, or can you do it both ways?
You can go either direction.
All right. Just curious.
No, I'll wait to comment.
If you have questions, let's, stick to questions now, and we'll.
I have a question
I think, yeah, go ahead.
for staff. So we have 43 total acres approximately.
Of
If we
the main
subtract
parcel.
out
Yeah.
10 acres for yeah,
43 is the main parcel,
yeah.
not including the road annexations.
Okay, so 43 minus the 10 that's donated gives us roughly 33? Am I following that?
That would be, correct.
Okay. Math's
That's
all
good
right.
math.
Okay, and then minus another 2 acres for a park, right?
4 acres.
Two are in.
2 of the 10 is going to the park.
Yes.
And then we have 2 of the remaining 33 also going to a park.
Correct.
Is my math working so far?
Yep.
All right, so 30, what's the unit count that potentially could be provided with under 31 acres in R3? Do we have that number?
Roughly, I mean, maxing it out, you're looking at, I believe it's, what is it, 17 units per acre approximately, give or take, let's say 1, over that remaining area. That would be maxing it out. Now, of course, that you have to factor in your infrastructure,
Right,
your
your road.
streets into that and everything else. And so a lot of the property would be lost to
Right.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks.
And one more question
Mm-hmm.
for staff. So if, so whatever the zoning is, there has to be a development plan that comes before us in council once one is created. But there are developments that happen by right, so there wouldn't be any guarantee that a development plan wouldn't come before us, not creating more density than maybe staff would like in some of the buffer zones, just because it would be by right? Did I ask that in a weird way?
Guess I didn't follow it.
I'm not sure I'm following it.
So,
I guess
you're saying like somebody would just come and stick a few houses
Well,
on
so
the whole
my-
43 acres? and
Sure, well, no,
call it
my
good?
question is, I think one of you said that, the staff would be receptive to and encouraging buffer areas,
Yeah.
with the agricultural land and the Meadowlark estates. But there's no guarantee, if it's zoned one thing, that a developer can't come in and just do whatever they can do by right. Is that correct? Staff can't prevent that.
To a degree, if there's
Okay.
strictly by right development.
Yeah, but it's pretty limited as far as what they'd be able to do permitted outright. On the residential side of things, you have, I forget the cutoff specifically, but I believe if it's R3, for instance, anything over 19 units would have to come to you all as either limited impact or major impact review, right? So.
But 19 at a time would not.
Correct, yeah, at R3. I'd have to go back to the use table to find that out. But in any case, it's a relatively small number of units over this entire 43 acres that we're talking about before it triggers a land use application process. And I can look up those numbers if you're interested, so.
I just know that we've seen some things before where it's been 19, and then another 19, and then another 19. So sorry for my, sorry if I'm being triggered by your comment.
Yes, yeah, I think I know where you're going with that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
20 or more is major.
Sure, we'll further this discussion and questions. So with that, let's move on to the applicant.
Good questions all the way around. And I would like to thank the neighbors who came out and would like to talk about what this should look like up against the west side of the property. And I think there's definitely room to talk about that. I don't have it in my slides, but if we could look at the annexation map, there is a 40-foot irrigation ditch easement along the west property line. So there's some opportunity, I think, to talk about what, I can't find who I'm talking to, and I better stay into the microphone, but I think there's absolutely room for some dialogue on what that west property line should look like. And it's certainly not going to be 3 stories, 5 feet off the property line. And I think just good design would dictate that, and anything that, just respecting the neighboring land uses being good planning, and anything that's good planning practice, I think we'd be pretty open to writing into the annexation agreement, especially if we're talking about an R3 zoning. So let's maybe try to get a dialogue open after this meeting. I appreciate you showing up again. The only two slides that I have prepared for zoning are why I don't like R2 zoning, otherwise known as, if we were gonna rename R2 zoning, it would be called, okay, I prepared one more. That's just the Salida zoning map showing that it's mostly R3 around the subject parcel with a little bit of R2. If we were gonna rename R2 zoning, it would be called single family and duplexes and really nothing else. And it's really similar to R3 except for a couple problematic numbers in the dimensional standards. And so imagine this townhome having townhomes on either side of it. So it's a middle unit and you have, the front setback's the same in R2 and R3. You can have 15 feet to the porch. You got a nice porch, a 45-foot deep townhome, as some of you are builders, know this better than me. You get a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen in that depth. And talking percentages, it doesn't matter how wide it is. The backyard's 23 feet, the garage is 20, and half an alley is about 14. That is 30% landscape right there, which means that you can do this in R3 and you can't do it in R2. So you need the side yard setback basically that every unit of a duplex has in order to make the unit work in R2. So that's one reason I don't like R2. And the other one is on the next slide. The other problematic number is you only get 15% of the lot for parking and access. And most of Salida is zoned R2. So you just look around, it's single family houses and duplexes. These are two of the only examples I could think of in town. The one on the left is on I Street, around like 9th maybe, and they use the right-of-way to perpendicular park so that they don't have to count their parking lot as lot coverage. And that, I'm not sure how they got that through back in the day. That wouldn't be allowed. The other one is on 3rd Street by the intersection with N. And they decided instead of putting a nice porch or frontage up to 3rd Street like it should be, they had to put the garages there at 3rd Street. So we get an ugly street frontage out of the deal because this was R2 and they don't have room to build the proper parking circulation on the actual property. So those are my reasons I don't like R2. We're super open to dialogue with the neighbors. We want to plan this thing right, but we would really appreciate if we could zone the property R3. That's all I have.
Any questions for Bill? No?
Thanks.
Okay. All right, if there's no questions for those guys, I'm sure we did it. We'll move on to public input for this, for the R3. Do you have a sign-up sheet for me? Yep. Sure. Oh, there's nobody. You thought,
And we heard your comments.
if you want to come up and speak again, you may. Absolutely, sure. I'd allow that.
I'm gonna get salty first.
So, thank you all for that discussion because it was very helpful. So, what I've seen in the past for the other annexations that have occurred where I've actually been attending and listening is exactly what the gentleman, or Bill, I think said, was the fact that because it's all one lot, a parcel, that you couldn't, because there was same kinds of questions happened there. Could you split it so that the area that is closest to the more, residential or rural would be R2, and then the areas that were needed would be R3, okay? And again, the answer was what he answered. So some of the things that you all discussed, made sense. I know they're more work, I get that, but it would be one way to solve the problem for both, which would be to do the R3 for the places for aging, and then to have the other areas be R2. And forgive me, but there is a big difference between R2 and R3, and we've seen it. Visually, there's a huge difference, and many of the places that are R3 still have parking problems. I would say Angel View, the people that live in Angel View are constantly complaining because they don't have enough parking. And so now you have many more people there with cars all over the place, everywhere that they can put a car. So those are just my comments. So I do appreciate that you all are thinking through the process, and I urge you to make it R2 and then have them come back, however it needs to happen legally, to make the portion that needs to be R3. Because the minute you make it R3, we are screwed. Meadowlark Estates and all the areas around there are screwed because I don't care if there's a 40-foot or whatever it is, our views are the volume of people on Meadowlark, driving, it's gonna be impossible. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Salty? Salty was going to come up and sign up, so.
We're pretty sure we can spell it.
Is it IE?
Sorry. My name's Salty. I'm an advocate for affordable housing in our community. I'm like the stats person right now, so I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm sure you probably do, that 9 out of 10 people who live in Chaffey County right now could not afford to buy a house today. Those guys are screwed. And I want to talk about just the density, and that it is the only way to get housing affordable. It is the only way to get the cost down. The cost of land is so high, the cost of construction is so high. And if we care about our environment, if we care about the cars and the parking, then we want people where they can commute, and where they can ride share, and where they can, where they're in the city center and not sprawled out where every single person has to use a car just to get around our community. If we care about the environment, then the shared walls and the density actually is way better as far as just the heating and cooling costs. So especially for the seniors, I would really highly recommend going R3 because we're in a housing crisis and we need the cost of housing to be lower. I mean, we can't really make it lower, but we can try to make it stop getting more expensive. I read an article recently that was, your house made you rich, now sell it. And it was talking about all these people whose properties have tripled in value and how they should be just sitting on a gold mine, but instead they're getting screwed by the property taxes. And they want to sell and they want to downsize, but they can't because they're competing with my generation for the smaller houses because that's all we can all afford anymore. So if we care about our community right now, then we want the density, we want the smaller houses for the seniors and for the workforce, for everyone, because that's how we solve our housing crisis. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Would anyone online like to speak? Please raise your hand.
Hi, Betsy Dittenberg, the Chaffey County Community Foundation. Wearing my hat as part of the Housing Solutions Coalition that represents a number of different agencies that are partnering on helping to solve housing, I want to reiterate some of what Salty said, is that density is not a dirty word, and in fact, it is a tool that is necessary for making building affordable in this community. I think the Places to Age group still has an uphill battle ahead of them, and it's going to be a challenge to come up with the finances for this. And this is one tool that the Planning Commission can give them, is to have it be rated at that highest density, just to give them the flexibility to make it as affordable as possible, instead of trying to, create more roadblocks in it. So I would encourage you to consider that high density rating in recognition of the concerns that were raised today. There will be other steps in this process for folks to weigh in on the design and the layout and, everything that goes into that. And so I heard that they were very considerate of those concerns and will incorporate them into further steps. So I do encourage you to approve the R3 density rating today.
Thank you.
I just want to affirm what I've heard from this gentleman here, and we hope we get to talk and meet, and then from this lady who just spoke, that there'll be discussion. And there'll be, that let's, maybe we got an opportunity here to do something a little bit different instead of some of the stuff that we're doing now, that really is a crown jewel of the community, or one of them. So I look forward, and we look forward to those discussions and understanding we can't get everything we want, but we sure would like some input on how it goes. Okay, thanks a lot.
I'd just like to address the comments on R3 densitying is the only way to create affordable housing. That is not true. Zoning requirements and building requirements have a lot to do with how much it costs to build a home. And there are a lot of feel-good requirements being put on the housing market, say that you have to do this, you have to do that. In the master plan of Salida, they're calling for the mandatory removal of gas heating and gas stoves. It's in the master plan. And who's going to bear that cost? The homeowner. That's not going to be paid for by city or the state who makes the mandates. So just keep in mind that density is not the only key to affordable housing. There's a lot of zonings and regulations that drive up the cost of housing, and I'm not going to list them all here, but I'm sure you're all aware of it. Anything that requires some additional requirement costs money, and the builder passes it on to the consumer. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody online?
They haven't raised their hand.
Okay. All right, with that, we are going to close the public input, close the public hearing, and move on to commissioner discussion. Don't all start at once.
Well, let me say something about the R3 zoning, because it does allow mixed use of buildings. You can have single-family, townhomes, et cetera. And that's really what comes forth in the plan development as to how to bridge that in a informed way, architecturally sound way, sustainable way, et cetera. The other interesting thing from my point of view is the applicant can change their zoning. They can subdivide the property. They have options available in tools. So whether we make a decision to support this or an alternative, I think in either case, the applicant can come back with a change under the planned development phase. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Confirmation, staff?
Yeah, they certainly could come back and subdivide and request any number of things, really, from the zoning side to the use permissions.
That's right.
It's not necessarily a guarantee that this conceptual plan would require a plan development. It's possible that it could come in with just the subdivision. And then, as to my understanding regarding the assisted living, that would most likely be seen as what we have in our code as a nursing home, which is a major impact review to be located onto a singular property. So that would go back to you all.
Major impact review doesn't involve rezoning though, right?
No, the rezoning would have to be separate.
Separate.
Yeah.
And all
But
of those
it's major impact review, whether it's R2 or R3.
And all of those things require additional staff costs, correct? Fees, each time we do. something.
Yeah, those
There's more
applications,
fees,
yes.
right. Yeah. So are you satisfied with your?
Yes.
Did you have more?
I'll wait.
I just have a question. If whatever we decide on the actual zoning, we are recommending this to council. It is ultimately council's decision. Could we make a further recommendation that the applicants and the adjacent neighbors meet to try to come to a consensus regarding buffering? Would that be something we could recommend
I
to
think that's out of
council?
line.
You think it's out of line? I'm asking staff, actually. You think it's out of line? Is that out of line, Bill? Do you think?
My gut says that's not something that would be a part of the official recommendation. I think it certainly could be an informal recommendation in this room.
Right. That's kind of what I meant, yeah.
Well, my question is this is a nonprofit, and Mr. Treat is giving certain amount of acreage for the elderly plan that they have in mind. So if we keep adding these additional, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, we could sink this project. And he could say, I'm not gonna give the 10 acres if it's not a nursing home, and then what? He could then develop it himself, or what?
I mean, obviously, I can't speculate. We can't speculate,
I
you know,
understand, but what I'm
for Mr.
saying
Treat,
is
but.
We're talking like this was gonna be a subdivision like Angel View. It's not. I mean, I don't know how
I mean,
we can protect that, but I'd hate to see this project sink, because I can't see somebody that wants to move out of their big house to a small house in a neighborhood for the elderly and wanting another single-family home to maintain. So it just seems to me we're defeating the purpose of the.
Like, Bill, at what point are we not seeing this again, some of it? At what point, when do we not see the buffer zone that we don't get to see, that we don't get to approve or send to city council?
If it were to come back as a major subdivision, let's say, and they were going to subdivide this into 100 lots, including that portion for places to age, there would be separate requirements there as far as the open space and everything else, of course, taking into account what's already been discussed around the annexation. But anything above and beyond that, like buffer-wise, would really need to be something offered up by the applicant, because it's not a requirement of the subdivision code. If they came in with a planned development because they needed to for one reason or another, that's something that could be negotiated, right, and recommended by this board.
Okay.
Otherwise, those individual lots on the perimeter all have the same
Designation
rear
as-
setbacks, side setbacks, et cetera.
Okay.
If we recommend and the city council approves this proposal as stated, is there any legal guarantee that there will places to age or someone else will put a senior community on those 10 acres?
Nope. And then we can't condition a zoning
Okay.
for such.
On what, as long as it's a legitimate use in the zone, then.
Yep.
But we do have Mr. Treat's letter stating his intent, which I think is pretty strong. It's not a legal document, I get that, but he's been working with Places to Age. He's being, I think, pretty generous with the amount of land, not only for Places to Age, but for the park. So, we can't legislate it, we can't guarantee it, but, at some point here in Salida, we have to trust that he means what he said in writing. In real estate, if it's not in writing, it's not enforceable. So we do have something in writing that says Mr. Treat will donate the land. And I appreciate the word donate, not make available, or in some other situations where the land has been made available and then sold. So that he specifically said donate. So, and we've been talking about this as a community for quite a long time. And Mr. Treat has been part of that discussion. I guess I just want to know, whatever the zoning is, that in the design phase and layout phase, that some consideration is given to the neighboring properties. And we can't do anything about that here tonight, except making a informal recommendation to council that something like that there isn't, and we've done that before, that there is an honest effort made by the applicants and the neighbors to come to some kind of a agreeable consensus as to that buffer. I'm actually kind of happy to know about that 40-foot, is it an easement between this development and Meadowlark? So that's a start.
40 feet's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. So, yeah, I'm ready to say I think R3 is the correct zoning for this, given all of the discussion we've had and the people we're dealing with on this. I think it's what we did in our flume. We had a lot of discussion about that when we passed the map. So, but we have to be conscious of and respectful of our neighbors.
Anybody else, or you ready?
Can I make a motion?
You got anything?
Go for it.
Okay. You got more? Okay. All right, with that said, I move to recommend City Council R3 be the proposed zoning of the Salida Quality Farms LLC Meadowlark Drive property as proposed to be annexed, I don't know why the blank was there, to R3 high-density residential zone district as it meets the applicable review standards. And I would like to add a note to council that we encourage and would appreciate the applicant and the neighbors coming to some kind of an honest and consensus on the buffering. I don't know, you can reword that any way you like, Bill, or Carolyn.
A second.
Second.
We have a second. So
Sorry.
we have a motion and a second to recommend R3 to City Council for the proposed annexation. Any further discussion?
Bush,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes.
Foley,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right.
I'd like to thank everyone in the audience who has attended on every side of this. Thank you very much. Okay.
He's probably going to file it. Do you guys need a 2-minute break?
There's going to be a little shuffle
There's
here.
going to be a
Let's just take
shuffle.
5.
Let's take 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take 5.
Let's slip out the side door.
I guess everyone was here for that one.
Okay, sounds good.
Nice to meet you, first of all, and I appreciate.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what we do. So it's good that you
Say others are sitting in the audience.
Yeah, I would have realized that before like 11 o'clock this morning about the MPA.
Good, how are you?
Okay.
Good to meet you.
You too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But that's an
Having fun yet?
I feel like I'm on
Definitely. But I don't know what it is about this side of town, but it draws people in every time we have something over here.
Well, it's kind of interesting.
It's not rural. That's housing, and over there's.
No, I agree with you.
How's it going? Good. Good, how are you? Good.
Perfect world, you'd have.
It's interesting, but I thought my question was.
Okay.
They can't.
Buildings going up now.
And each of you actually has some.
Yeah.
That's some crazy games. Game, I guess it was the last game with Miami.
So too close attention between Copa and Europe, like soccer stuff.
They were ahead,
Anywhere
2-0,
there's a canyon
going into the bottom of the ninth. Miami tied it up. They were ahead 4-2 going to the top of the bottom. They tied it up. They were ahead 6-4 going to the bottom of the 12th, and they won 6-5. And then the first game against the
You guys.
the Yankees.
Did you go by the property here at 6953
Against
County
the
Road?
Yankees, they were,
It's right there.
they'd been behind the whole game, they tied it up in the ninth and won it in the 10th.
Well, what it is, you know, it's the old historic
All right.
barn.
Everybody back?
Yeah, we're all back.
Somebody offered them a sugar.
You've just got, this is your whole show, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get going again here.
It's a Carolyn Poisson show.
Make sure I'm in the right spot. We are opening the hearing for the proposed Seuss annexation.
Cease?
Cease? Sorry, Ned.
It's okay.
I know it's Ned.
Right.
Okay, again, I will be presenting the two items associated with the annexation and zoning. Next slide. The request is to annex a total of 5.98 acres, including the property located at 6953 County Road 105 and a portion of Confluence Road right-of-way. A previous pre-annexation agreement with the Triple T Ranch minor subdivision required the property to be annexed once contiguity had been achieved. A sewer connection was also provided to the property previously. And those elements happened before the current property owner purchased the property. The next slide. The state mandated annexation process is being followed again in accordance with state statutes. And again, the substantial compliance hearing was, resolution was approved by council July 2nd and set the date of August 20th, so these two are on the same track, thankfully. And noticing and other hearings will follow. And the next slide. The property lies within the municipal services area, meets contiguity requirements, and can be served by city police and fire, and is a natural extension of the city's municipal boundary. Next slide. Comments that were received indicated that future park and open space requirements will need to be addressed. The property will need to connect to city water once the existing well fails. Salida schools will take fee in lieu instead of land dedication, and appropriate road right-of-way annexations and dedications should be completed. The next slide. So the petitioner included a list of conditions with the letter of intent. And in response, I'd like to just go over some of the key points here. There are no cost shares anticipated at this time. An annexation agreement will be drafted and need to be approved by City Council. Specific items to be addressed with future development would include dedication of the appropriate rights of way, dedication of parks and open space, and/or payment of fees in lieu, affordable and inclusionary housing requirements, and building envelopes and plans and permit requirements would depend on the development being proposed, and other fees such as system development fees and school fees and such would be applicable at that time. And specifically, the petitioner indicated a desire to preserve and protect the historic structures on the property, and various tools are available to accommodate that and help preserve the historic resources of the property. So with that, those are my key points on that. In the motion are some elements that cover the city's, what would go in the annexation agreement. That's what's in the motion. But I don't know if you want to have the petitioner come up.
And we might have questions for you.
I think I have a question. I saw in the letter that was submitted, he has a whole bunch of conditions, but this is just about annexation and zoning, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, some of those things were not really pertinent.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
And the roads are included in the annexation
The
appropriately?
Confluence Road right-of-way is included. There's some road improvements that will ultimately need to be completed on the west side and the north side. And then the annexation of County Road 105 would be a future, no, excuse me, that's already been done. That was done with the
Already done,
Biker
right.
Baker annexation. So County Road 105 already has been annexed. There are some right-of-way improvements, such as the 8-foot path that's proposed to go there, that would need to be negotiated, the location of.
And that's something that would be negotiated between the city and the applicant?
Would that be only upon development?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking, right?
It
It's
would-
not for
Unless the
this,
city just decided to build it and pay for it all and
right. Which would be
work on that
lovely.
separately.
So, no development, nothing has to be done,
Right.
correct?
Pretty much.
Correct.
You
Any
can
other
see
questions?
that this little strip on the very north side of Confluence Road is the piece that is currently not annexed and is part of this annexation plan.
Can you
About a
point to
quarter
that?
acre.
Could you point to that, Carolyn?
Yeah. Is it this?
Yeah.
Right on the north edge.
Right, and that's part of the annexation?
Yes,
Right.
it is.
Okay. And my understanding is that Mr. Cease must do this because of the pre-annexation requirement, so.
That's satisfying those
Right,
requirements.
to satisfy that, which happened before his purchase of the property, as I understand. Okay. Okay.
There's no other questions for staff?
Nope.
Mr. Cease, would you like to come up?
Thank you. My name's Ned Cease. I'm the owner of the property and the I suppose, reluctant applicant. So I purchased this property on a Wednesday. It was March 30th of 2016. On Thursday, the 26th of the preceding week, is when the pre-annexation agreement was signed. It wasn't reflected in any title work. I was not made aware of it. It was, so it came as quite a surprise to me that I suddenly found myself obligated to do something that I had no idea was on the page when I first initially purchased the property. I want to start by saying that I think all of our goals here are the same. You know, we all think about the community of Salida. We're all looking at the future. We're all thinking about what are the reasons we live here and how do we make a community that serves both now and in the future, everyone. That's where I am too. Our definition of how to best do that may sometimes vary a little bit, but I think we all have the same end goal in mind. For me, I never intended to be a real estate developer. I never intended to be standing in front of you. I still don't want to be one. But this is my home. This is where my family comes. My nephew is visiting right now. He had no choice but to come to maybe the world's most boring meeting, not for us, but for him. And so it's also my largest asset. And so it's really important to me to pay attention to this and to get this right. And over the course of my time, if we could look at the area surrounding, you all are well familiar with Two Rivers Phase 1, Two Rivers Phase 2, Confluence, the high density, low income that went into Confluence, the Magpie, and then most recently Biker Baker. So that's all my neighbors, right? And when I look at my property, I ask the question of what's the highest and best use? How do I preserve both my equity in the property, but also how do I preserve, I feel like a caretaker for a bunch of really old structures that are there. I don't know if anyone recognizes, this is the super sausage that kind of floats around town. This is all dried in one of those old structures there. I wind up with about 30 Italian families that came with the property. They show up. Honestly, I came home, so they put it in January 1st. They take it out in early March. So about a week after I bought the property, I came home, and there are literally 75 people there. And they're like, who are you? and why are you here? So it's a little bit of a unique situation that I find myself in. And so the next thing I'd like to say is that there are really only two, as I understand it, there are really only two negotiated processes. One of them is the plan development, the other is the annexation. I don't plan to do a plan development, and I'm being dragged to the negotiation table of an annexation agreement. I come here with good intention, but I also come here with relatively little faith. Because over the course of the time I've been here, I could go back through a whole long list. I've seen, number one, I've been promised that this would never happen by city staff, not current city staff, but former city staff. I've been promised that it would never make sense. I actually had the mayor say to me, a former mayor say to me, we would never annex. It would never make sense to do an annexation when we're not doing a development, because how would we know what was fair or what to ask for? Which is my position, always has been my position, remains my position, but I'm trying to proceed forward in good faith. I've also come to these meetings and seen roads drawn not only across my property, but through my structures by city staff. And so for me, I'm now at a point of, I absolutely will not move forward without things in writing, without things being clear. I do not want to ask for anything that's unfair. I don't want to ask for any special treatment, but I want to make absolutely sure that there's no ambiguity or uncertainty in the future, so that whatever comes to pass with this property, I've done my part both in protecting my equity and also in giving these historic structures a place to go. So that's what my intention and goal is in this process. There are a couple things that I asked for as conditions that all of them were intended to be consistent with how things have developed around me. There are 3 different intersections that are the only ways to achieve getting to this property. One of them is at US 50, one of them is Vanderveer Road and US 50, and the other one's at Oak Street. I think there are existing plans to improve all 3 of those different intersections, but I used to date a traffic engineer, and when she saw this whole thing, she said, you absolutely cannot let your property get stuck with having developed those 3 intersections. You're going to be the last property to develop in this area. If a traffic study is done and you're the one who is one car too many, your property's worthless. You can't deal with this. And so any annexation agreement that I sign will include something that says I will not be held solely responsible to improve all these intersections when the majority of the traffic that's going through them isn't going to be a result of any development that happens here. And so that's why that condition was there. I noticed that that's not called out in the conversation. So that was one. A second one, and I recognize this is unusual, but again, another one of these meetings that I came to, I heard the mayor say, it was actually a city council meeting, not a planning meeting, but the mayor said, hey, I can ask for a rock from the moon if I want to. This is a negotiated process. We can do anything we want here. And so with that in mind, I'm trying to figure out a way to give the historic structures on my land a value. And the only way that I can see to do that is to tie a short-term permit to the existence of those historic structures. That's an unusual request, but what I'm trying to get at is, hey, this isn't affordable housing. This is a historic ranch home that was recently renovated and is a beautiful home to live in. We are not taking away from the affordable inclusionary pool with this request, but I want to have some way that keeping those old structures standing stands a chance. And when Flour Mill moved forward and it was shown that you can do 69 units on 2 acres, I would hate to see 200 acres on my 5 point, whatever it is now, after I gave away the road. So that's where my mindset is. There's another request that I think will cause some friction, and that is around creating an envelope around the historic structures. The reason I ask for that is when I look at the future, it's not been adopted yet, but the code in the future requires minimum density. And my fear is that if there's a minimum density requirement on the property, it's impossible to keep the old structures around. Now, city staff has said, hey, will you just subdivide those out? And then they're sort of grandfathered into where they're subdivided out, and you're in good shape. My concern is I don't want to have to create multiple pieces of property, multiple tax burdens, multiple et cetera. I want to enshrine the fact that, hey, these are historic structures that, I don't know if anyone recognizes that cool old stone barn on 105, but that's the one we're talking about. And I don't want that to be a sacrificial piece. I want it to be protected without doing a historic thing that wouldn't allow us to fix it and make it safer than it is right now. Honestly, I wouldn't want to invite the public into it today. So that's what my mindset is. That's what my motivation is. That's why I've made these requests in the letter that I did. And I just want to be clear, I don't want to be unreasonable. I don't want special treatment. I do want to look ahead and think forward, and that's what I'm asking for. Does anyone have any questions for me?
When you said a short-term permit, you mean a short-term rental?
Yeah, short-term rental permit. I think the old farmhouse would be, a desirable place to stay. And in my perfect world and pointy little head, it feels like if it's possible to create a short-term permit that is linked to the continued existence of the historic structures, then they stand a chance. And if they're torn down, take away the permit.
Do you already have a permit in the city?
No, I was offered one in the county and I was told I had to annex, and that was a year and a half ago, so I sort of wish I'd followed through.
Sure.
I am told two things on that. I am told, number one, there is precedent for short-term use by right. For example, in the phase 1 of Two Rivers, there's a number of units that have a short-term use by right, so that's not an unprecedented thing in our city. Number one. Number two, it's been reviewed with the attorney, and there is, so my understanding is there's kind of you can only have so many in a certain area, and there are not any in my area. So I think that it's not a request that's out of bounds of what would be possible to do.
So I guess I'm torn between if we really have the authority to help you do this, like in an annexation, or, I mean, if you talk to historical preservation people that would actually do that for the structures that you're talking about. I'm just like, you're talking like almost like a deed restriction, but wouldn't even come with the annexation.
No, actually, I'm sorry if I'm unclear, and it's probably because I'm unclear up here. So it's hard to be clear with your words when you're not clear in your thought. So the reason that I asked in my letter for a 200-foot envelope around these historic structures is right now, I don't think that's important at all. I think in the future, when we get to a minimum density requirement, if that envelope doesn't exist, then whoever does development, it's not going to be me, honestly, but whoever does development is going to have no choice but to take the square footage of those historic structures and sort of be stuck with, well, how do I get to the density that I'm required to achieve with these historic structures in place? The answer is you can't. And the code, as I read it, now I haven't read it recently, that's a few months old, so I don't know if it's changed, but the proposed code doesn't have any contemplation whatsoever of any factor other than if you're in this zoning, you have this minimum density that's required. There's no kind of cutout for any sort of pre-existing structure.
So you're really just talking about a protection for the future when it's not yours anymore?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that within our purview?
I don't know that it is.
Help us, staff.
Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry.
I'm just wondering if, like, the requirements, if that's really something that can be
Is it
included
appropriate?
or holds any water in our annexation agreement.
It could be incorporated. It's very difficult, obviously, because we're talking about a theoretical regulation that has not been approved at this point, right, via the minimum densities. But I would say that in all likelihood, there will be cutouts, to use Ned's words, for pre-existing structures that would allow a lot created, say, through a subdivision that had a structure on it to not have to meet those minimum densities. That's pretty typical when you have minimum densities. Obviously, it's up to it'd be up to Ned or a future developer as far as where they would draw the lines for the platting. And, you know, one option would be, of course, to draw the lines of that lot as far away from the structures as they wanted to. If you all were comfortable with it, though, you certainly could add a recommendation that there be an agreement point in the annexation agreement that just clarifies that any future minimum density requirements would not apply to the lot on which the historic structures stand. So in other words, it just wouldn't apply for whatever boundaries were drawn around those historic structures.
And I just want to add, that would be agreeable to me.
Okay.
So, but just to interject here, this is not our purview. He's going to have to make an annexation agreement with city council, right? And
Right, we
Mr.
recommend.
Swift,
Yes, but
you have a pretty clear idea of what you want, and he needs to bring that to, I guess, legal, and like you guys can write that out. Like, what do we have to say about it, you know?
Well,
the points of the annexation agreement often are discussed at the time of annexation, and so you can certainly provide your recommendations for those agreement points.
Okay.
so I mean, I think it's pretty reasonable not to want to be solely responsible for road improvements. Why did staff decide not to put that in?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, I was looking for clarification on, because you're talking not road improvements on the property, you're talking.
No, I want to be clear. So I
talking
recognize that any future development will improve the contiguous roads. That's been true for every development around me, and I don't want to be treated differently. What I'm afraid of is non-contiguous improvements where a traffic study comes back, says, hey, we can't continue to coexist with, whether it's the Oak Street intersection or whatever else, and this property, as the last one to develop in the area, becomes kind of the last domino to fall, so to speak, which would then suddenly require me to pay for all of a road improvement that's more than the value of the property. I'm not trying to be unreasonable, I just want that spelled out.
Sure, and that seems reasonable to me.
I'm glad we agree.
Would that happen?
Well, there is a chance. You know, a lot of communities, because intersection improvements, be it signals or physical changes to intersections, are very costly, but they're always on public property, and they're always triggered by development. A lot of communities do have either requirements to make those improvements or fees in lieu of making those improvements. I can't look to the crystal ball at this point whether or not we will have that. We do not currently have that, but it's possible as the community grows, something along those lines could be implemented. Where if a development does trigger the need to put in, say, a signal, that a fee in lieu could potentially be required.
I just don't see how a lot this size is going to affect two state highways and a federal.
Well, as a resident who commutes from there across town every day, we've seen an incredible amount of density come up around me.
Sure.
We've all been in those meetings. And I think when you add in the flour mill, assuming that breaks ground and happens, and we have a couple hundred cars a day in addition, you do start to get to a point, already today, there's an insufficient throat. This is again from a friend, not from a professional opinion, but she is a professional in this area. There's an insufficient throat between Vanderveer Road and 50. There's the 50 and 105 intersection that's kind of an angle down by the old Stockyard Bridge. That is a clearly non-conforming intersection in every way. And then the Oak Street situation, I think the ameliorating factor here is, Bill, you can speak to this more clearly than I can, but I believe that there's already money in place for the Oak Street intersection to be addressed. That's really the problematic one, is where 50, Oak Street, and 105 all come together with a very short distance between 50 and 105. Can everyone picture that?
Isn't that CDOT, though?
That is CDOT. That is a CDOT project that is planned for a
Same-
roundabout.
Same thing with the whole Oak Street corridor, that down to where that is CDOT?
That is CDOT, and that's a project that the city is initiating for the
And
improvements
anything
there.
on Highway 50 is CDOT.
Correct.
So what we're talking about is Vanderveer Road, maybe
Well,
105, which is a partially county road and partially annexed, right? So we're talking about the interior streets of that neighborhood.
So I think it is possible for a development, this is what I was told, it's possible for a development to trigger a requirement to pay CDOT. And so, again, it may be this is a non-issue, in which case I think the language shouldn't be hard to construct. If Oak Street's already a plan, if Highway 50 isn't a problem, great. But to me, saying this property absolutely is responsible for the cost of contiguous improvement in the future, great, not trying to escape that, but I don't want to have it where this property becomes suddenly hostage
Right.
to these larger problems that are not of my creation.
So would staff have any issue with that language, not solely responsible for intersections and/or road improvements, future road improvements?
I think that the challenge with that is that we're talking about another agency that may require any of these improvements that
Sure.
we
I
might
don't
trigger.
think it's
Because
within
if this
our-
ended
I
up
don't think
being
it's within our-
if this was a major subdivision that proposed several hundred units on it,
Right.
it's possible that CDOT would say that's going to trigger X, as far as the improvement.
Right.
That's kind of out of our hands. And so the alternative to that is for the city to agree to pay for whatever that is. That's basically what Mr. Cease is saying, is that if anything down the line were to trigger
Anything on his property?
on his property,
Or to
correct.
trigger
But this is,
Were
if
to trigger
it's
those
developed,
improvements.
right? And you've said you have no plans to develop. If you or someone else develops in the future, like, I do have a little bit of a hiccup there. Like, someone's developing it, gonna make a lot of money off of it. It's fair to ask for improvements, I think. If you keep it as is for decades, like, nothing's gonna happen.
It's sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back. We've added hundreds of units,
Right.
and at some point in time, that's going to be too much. And is it fair to have the person that adds 10 more units to those hundreds to pay? A question.
That's why a lot of communities put these fees in lieu in place
Yeah.
to collectively.
Right.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
So
A question. Okay, there has to be a signed annexation agreement. What happens if Mr. Cease refuses to sign an annexation agreement?
I can speak to that because I asked my lawyer.
Okay,
The city of Salida has the right to force me to apply to annex. The city of Salida does not have the right to force me to sign an annexation. And so there's a little bit of, to me, it's an odd scenario that we find ourselves in. Again, I want to be clear that my goal here is in good faith, but it's a little bit odd to me to be standing here, to have been forced to pay these fees, to have been forced to go hire a lawyer to understand what this process is, to be forced to do all these things doesn't feel very good. I'm sure you can understand that. And it's a negotiated process that I am not obligated to agree to the negotiated outcome of. I would like to find an outcome that we all feel good about. And I think that there's plenty of common ground that we can explore and come to. But that's my understanding from my counsel.
Can anyone just give me some background? Like, what's the point of a pre-annexation agreement? Like, 8 years ago or whatever, does anyone know?
Well, so this property was given access to wastewater, so city services. That was the purpose of the pre-annexation agreement, because they're in the county. You generally don't get sewer or water if you're out in the county. However, there's an option to do it through the mechanism of a pre-annexation agreement, basically saying, here you go, but you need to sign this agreement that X has to happen down the line.
Makes sense.
So what would be the harm? Well, anyways,
I would like to
let's
get
go
on to the public
comment.
if we need to, and we can certainly come back to you.
Hold it for staff.
Do we have people signed up to speak to this, or people who would like to speak to this? Is there anybody online? I'd like to give that opportunity.
If you're online and would like to speak, please raise your hand.
And there's no one signed up here, Carolyn?
Nobody?
They're not raising their hands.
Okay. I'll go ahead and close public comment, and then we can.
Shall I sit?
No, you can, I'm
I'll
sure
stay
we're
right
going to
here.
kind of continue this conversation with you,
Perfect.
which I think we're fine with. I think it's productive.
So I want to
Oh.
know from staff if there's any reason, I mean, the words "not solely responsible," all that means is whoever owns this parcel is not going to have 100% of the cost burden of something coming down. I don't see the harm in that.
That's a good point, actually,
You know,
that wording
So,
solely.
not solely responsible for intersections.
Maybe partially responsible, but not.
Well, it could be, but not solely responsible. And the other thing, I think we've already come to an agreement on no minimum densities applied to this parcel, or would it be applied to the historic structures, one or the other? So the only thing that I then would take issue of is the short-term permit. We have a licensing process. You're welcome to get one. But I don't think by right is something that we need to do in an annexation agreement. You can still do it. Not going to prevent you from doing it.
Sure, I would like to make sure that that is a possibility. And again, here we stand, here I stand before you, trying my best to be reasonable.
Sure.
And I appreciate where you're coming from. I would say, I would take a little bit of issue with not solely responsible because someone throws a penny in and we've met that condition. I would think it would be nice to have some sort of, the word is escaping me, but basically, if I'm 100 units and there are 1,000, then I should be responsible for 10%. Proportional, thank you. I've got holes in my brain apparently, and that one fell through. But some sort of proportionate type language I think would be great. I don't want to be unreasonable, but I don't want to be the straw that broke the dam.
I can do that. As far as the permit goes, you know, the agreement, as I recall, says that 3.5% of the residential real estate is available for short-term rentals. As more residential real estate becomes available, more short-term rental licenses become available, are potentially part of the pool. So, you know, I don't know that I'm in favor of that one, but I certainly could go with the other two.
Thank you.
Bill, you mentioned fees in lieu does our city have that in place?
No, we would need to do an impact analysis to determine what that fee in lieu would be. So and it's a pretty long process, generally takes maybe a year to do, to establish that sort of a fee on right-of-way improvements.
So any other parcel, like other parcels that could be in a similar situation, we've never had a fee in lieu. Like it has always been, so to speak, in that theoretical scenario,
When it's developed.
a race to, I mean, you're dependent on the situation. You know, if you're the last to the table, you could trigger that. But that's always been I mean, I'm trying to understand if this is a unique situation or if this is kind of how it is, developing property.
You know, it depends on whether or not those impact fees are in place, of course. We're talking about the possibility that such a impact fee could be in place in subsequent years. You know, if this doesn't develop out, say for another 5 years, and then that comes into place, then yeah, it could be subject to that. However, when you do that impact analysis, you're looking at the impact generally on a per unit basis, right? And sometimes it differs by the type of unit, but that fee gets established. And when the traffic, say Ned comes in with a major subdivision that requires a traffic impact analysis, then it's going to take into account all the surrounding development that goes into those potential improvements. So it would by nature be proportional, because it's taking into account all the rest. Obviously, to Francie's point, you could put in language that does specify this development would not be solely responsible, just to make double sure of that. Just to give you an example, because there is all this other development, if there was a light required, say, out at Highway 50,
50 in
in Vanderveer Ranch at some point, let's say the cost of that is $1 million. Well, you're taking into account the, say, 1,000 units, right, that contribute into that intersection, and his is 100 units. Well, then that fee in lieu would be based off of that 10% of the entire cost.
So he'd only be proportionally.
So it would be proportional, and then either the city or CDOT would be responsible for the rest of the cost.
I would like to have that, I'm not aware that that language exists today.
It doesn't, because we don't have that impact.
Yeah, and so I just want to be, I'm trying to look down the road and just be ahead of it, and so I think you all get where I'm coming from.
Yep. So if we were to say that there's no minimum density applied, would it be to the parcel or to the historic?
It means I couldn't fix them.
Well,
Yeah, it does limit you what you can or can't do.
Right,
Yeah.
all right.
So I appreciate that thought, and I that was kind of where I started, and then I realized that, like, that old barn, it uses round lumber, not dimensional lumber for a lot of the structure and so on. And so suddenly now it's like, hey, this is such a cool place. Wouldn't it be awesome? Someone develops somewhere down the road and it's a communal gathering space. Well, it would need to be improved in order to be able to do that, to fill that role. And it couldn't be done if it had been listed as historic, because it would have to be kept consistent with how it was originally built. That was my understanding.
Bill, doesn't the
think
Historic Preservation Commission do variances on those kinds of things when it's not available?
No, sorry. Their purview is just the downtown historic district.
Okay, I just, that's an aside. I'll drop that because I think it's off topic.
Yeah, it's a little.
If I can throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
He could designate as a local landmark.
Oh.
But that is a very strict sort of control of the exterior features of the building. I did also check with the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, and they do consider short-term rentals if they are preserved, and if you obtained a grant from the state as a commercial property, there is a possibility to get grant funding for that. So basically, they will fund, there is a possibility to get grant funding for a commercial structure that the public then has access to, but then you do have to stick to the Secretary of Interior standards that they apply to the grant. So those 2 options are there, but there are standards that you then have to
And they're
follow.
outside of our annexation purview, is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Who else?
So we're going to have two amendments.
I'm going to propose two, yeah.
Here's some additional language you might want to consider,
You want to make the motion?
No. I'm just trying to think the right way here, because what Bill has said is that they would typically have in the land use code some criterion or amendment to that would address this fee in lieu for traffic assessments. Do I understand that right, Bill?
If that were to ever be put.
Whatever. So something like that would have to be initiated, because nobody in this area is going to pay out money unless it's being mandated.
Right.
So perhaps we could say the applicant would be held harmless for the cost of any improvements due to mitigate future traffic study requirements, unless these costs are proportioned among property owners per an amended land use code.
I would.
Something like that. I'm just trying to bring the
propose
fact.
something a little simpler and then toss it to our legal team to structure it in a way that makes sense, as we have been advised.
Is Nina with us?
She's not.
But she can hear the video.
But I think it would.
We have time to
Get the right
craft
legal words.
that language.
You'd have an opportunity, of course, to say yes, yes or no about the specific words, but we would at least get it in as to the council as an area of concern.
I really appreciate that consideration, and I see what you're trying to do, and I think it's the same thing I'm trying to do, and I'm sure there's a way to fly through that window.
I'm ready to make a motion. Does anybody object?
I have a question.
Okay.
So a few months ago, the property next door the flour mill project was rezoned. For that, like, let's say nothing happens to this property and they move forward, they are currently required to pay for all of the services to get to that property currently.
When you say this services,
City water, sewer.
yeah, system
road
development fees
improvement,
and,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Is there any requirement on this property to share in the benefit of, like, share in those costs?
There's not.
There are two cost share agreements already in place for adjacent development utility agreements. Those are called out, that homework's been done. And obviously, whatever development happened here, any tap fees and so on would all be taken care of at the time of that development. So not trying to get away from that. The condition that I put in the letter was just, hey, I don't want to just keep having stuff pile up on me. The two cost shares that are currently in existence, I never had any input to, I don't know anything about, wasn't aware of until they sort of had already happened. And it's like, oh, now I have a $100,000 liability that I never saw coming. And so I just want to spell that out. I think at this point, it's kind of a moot point because it's all looped there, but.
Yeah, to clarify, you've got the main services in Confluence Road, which is what he would utilize for developing out his property. The flour mill project had to extend, will have to extend the utilities from that Confluence Road intersection down. So we already have the cost obligations from the Two Rivers and Confluent Park PDs onto this property, so there's no need to do it for the flour mill. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman? After 10 years. Anybody ready for a motion?
They do.
I think we're ready.
Okay. I hereby make a motion to recommend the City Council approve the proposed cease annexation as it meets the findings of fact for annexation subject to specific conditions as outlined below. 1, all proposed development shall meet the requirements of the municipal code. 2, the annexation agreement shall acknowledge and document the following items. A, the city's intent to serve the property with utilities. B, all applicable cost recovery agreements and payment terms and conditions. C, the city acknowledges and allows use of the existing well until failure, after which time the owner shall connect to city water. D, the city acknowledges that existing agricultural uses are allowed to continue and existing associated structures may remain on the property. And the city acknowledges that a .27 acre Confluence Road dedication was made by the owner free from any compensation. I have 2 additional points. Do they need to be 3 and 4 or F and G?
I would add them under that
F
section.
and G?
So, yeah.
Okay, E. So F would be, I propose, the applicant I can't read my writing, the applicant would be only proportionally responsible for future intersections and/or common road improvements. That language subject to clarification by our legal staff. That's EFG. There will be, and the city agrees, there will be no minimum density applied to this parcel.
Point of clarification, the minimum density, if I understand Ned's request, has been specific to any parcel created around the historic piece.
Correct.
Okay.
Am I correct with that?
No minimum density applied to the
Yeah,
historic.
fundamentally, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I think your language is simple. I think what you're saying is you could add the words
Historic,
to the parcel containing historic structures.
yes.
Yep.
And I'm good with either one of those. I think we're shooting at the same target there.
I will add that language containing historic structures.
Basically meaning anything outside of that, any other lots would be subject to the minimum
If it were
density,
to be
should there
developed.
ever be.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, we have,
But we don't have historic, like, how are we defining the historic structures? Existing
we've-
structures as of this date? I mean,
Existing historic structures?
That works for me.
Okay, good. Thanks, Kenny.
Second.
Okay.
we had a couple of seconds.
Thirds
I don't
and
know.
fourths.
So we have a motion and a second to approve recommendation for annexation, correct? To city council with
Yes.
recommendations and two new amendments,
F and G?
F and G. Any further discussion? For it.
Colby,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes.
Foley,
Yes.
Layton,
yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Kribel.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Cease. Good luck
Okay.
with your short-term situation.
And now onto zoning for this.
Now we.
That's where the snacks come?
Yeah.
Would you like some?
No.
It's good.
Sausage, is it?
All right, we
Okay.
move on to recommendation on the proposed R3 zoning.
Zoning.
Okay,
6953 County Road 105.
moving right along.
Moving right
So,
along, like a herd of turtles.
You can go to the next slide. This request is to zone the property R3 High Density Residential. The site is currently zoned residential in Chaffey County. Properties to the east remain in Chaffey County and are zoned residential. Properties to the north and west are within city limits and include the Confluent Subdivision Plan Development Overlay, comprised of a residential mixed-use development, a 1.24 acre park dedication, and Salida Ridge Apartments. The approved Biker Baker / Flour Mill annexation and Magpie Apartments, zoned R3 high-density residential, are on the southern boundary. Next slide. The R3 zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan in that the proposed annexation lies within the municipal services area and will accommodate urban densities. A proposed 8-foot wide shared use path is planned to be extended along County Road 105. The exact location and costs have yet to be determined. Given that split zoning is not allowed, the R3 high-density residential zone would allow for greater density to be applied to a specific portion of the property, helping to preserve the site's existing historic resources. While the future land use map calls for variable residential neighborhoods, the proposed R3 designation is generally consistent with the zoning found in the adjacent properties and would continue the surrounding patterns of development. Next slide. In addition, the proposed zoning is consistent with the purpose of the zone district and has the capability for providing relatively high-density residential developments which are needed to address our housing demand and affordability. And while the underlying zoning of some adjacent properties is R2, the pattern of town hall style developments is compatible with the proposed R3 zoning. The existing historic structures on the property are of regional and national significance, including an outbuilding that may be one of the oldest known structures in the county. The applicant wishes to preserve these historic structures, and the R3 zoning could accommodate concentration of residential units outside of that portion of the property, thus preserving its historic integrity. The proposed zoning then is occurring because of the requirement that the property be zoned when annexed to the city in accordance with section 16450 of the Land Use and Development Code. Any questions?
Questions?
Nope.
I think
All
we
right.
covered it.
There's no question. Ned, do you have anything to add?
I feel like you got it. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, but.
Wait, is there anybody who wants to?
So my understanding is you're agreeable to the R3 because it would help you in the preservation of the structures that you have talked about. You feel that is the best way to go.
I mean, I think it has the most flexibility.
Yeah.
And so in the spirit of kind of trying to keep the playing field open, so to speak, I think it makes sense. It's what a majority of neighbor is, so I feel like it's consistent.
Yep, you're surrounded by it.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in public to speak to the zoning? Is there anybody online?
signed
I'll go
up?
ahead and open public comment.
Nobody's here. Nobody's online.
Okay. Go ahead and close public comment.
Go ahead and sit down, Glenn. Was there?
Oh.
That's yours.
No, that's my demo.
Discussion?
Commissioners, are you ready to make a motion?
Motion.
All right. I move to recommend City Council approve the proposed zoning of the seized property as proposed to be annexed to R3 High Density Residential Zone District as it meets the applicable review standards.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend to City Council R3 zoning for the cease annexation. Any further discussion?
Kribel?
Yes.
Dockery?
Yes.
Bush?
Yes.
Layton?
Yes.
Bomer?
Yes.
Follet?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Did you vote?
Oh, well, yes.
Oh.
Oh, Colby, sorry.
It's unanimous.
All right, we're going to take a 90.
It's fine.
Yeah, I'll try those.
Yeah. We might tackle you in a minute.
You should share.
Seems like you don't really want to eat the whole thing.
No, it seems like I'd just be wrong.
I might need a IPA with that. though.
Yeah.
Right, at least.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the same thing when you brought that.
All right, take a 90-minute break.
We'll carry
Thank
on
you guys
without
for being
you.
so patient with all of this. We will now move on
Lot to sit through.
to Shake and Roost Major Subdivision. Apparently Glenn is,
Okay, there we are.
Uno momento. Okay. Yes, so your final item on the agenda tonight is a major impact review for the Shake and Roost Major Subdivision. Okay, you can, this is the site. It's about a 0.95 acre site on the south side of Illinois between Teller and Milford Streets. Okay, keep going. So I went back and they presented a conceptual review to you and the city council back on March 18th of, it should be 2024. And there were a few questions about what is the process and why is it zone C1 and we're talking about residential. So I wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about that. So duplexes are allowed in the C1 district. And it's actually a limited impact review. So normally if somebody is coming in and doing, well, I don't know if it'd ever be normal, but they'd come in and they have a C1 site and they're gonna do a duplex on it, they'd come to the planning commission and you would give them final approval. We have been doing most of them administratively because most often that isn't the case. Now in this case, they're creating 14 lots, 7 buildings of 7 duplexes basically. So that's a major subdivision that kicks it into an even bigger process, which I think staff thinks supersedes that limited impact review. And it is an allowed use. I also pulled up your future land use map that was adopted last August. It actually shows it for higher efficiency residential on the site, even though it's zoned commercial. I think somebody pointed out in the conceptual review, there's like 3 blocks of commercial off Highway 50. So once you start getting to the north, there's not a lot of uses left from a commercial standpoint. So from a staff standpoint, I think this is a great use. The applicant points out that we have a number of school structures around the area, certainly a lot of school employees. They're going to try and keep it affordable. So I think this is a great use for this particular site. Okay, Catherine. So this is the development plan. It's a little bit different, I think, than what you looked at the conceptual review. They were just straight lots without any rear alley access. At least that's what it looked like to me, that you saw back last March. I think this is a great improvement. So what's really different is we have a 20-foot alley running along the rear of the lots that front on Illinois, as well as the lots that front on Teller Street. That's where your garages are going to be. That's where most of your local traffic in and out is going to stay. And then they also had to deal with stormwater retention, which creates that outlot to the very far south of the area. It's certainly open space. It's not going to be developed, but it's not really usable open space. So there will be the fee in lieu that's going to go along with the approval. Because it's a major subdivision, they have to build 2 affordable units on site, and then the remainder, in this case, it's about 1/3 of a unit that's going to be left over, they pay a fee in lieu for. I don't know all the details, but certainly Bill or Catherine can fill you in on what that looks like. Xcel Energy wrote us a letter with a number of concerns. I think the biggest one from not only applicant standpoint, but staff standpoint is kind of a blanket 10-foot PUE across both frontages and in the rear of this subdivision. For the most part in the rear, I think we can deal with because we have a 20-foot wide driveway, be a great place to put electricity. The applicant is continuing to work with them, so I think we'll get to a resolution. But I have a condition that ultimately, before we go to council, we should know if there's additional PUEs on the property. But I think it was maybe a knee-jerk reaction to something, and I think there's plenty of room to get electric and communications to the project.
Yeah.
I put a note about the rear setback. In this case, the lot line actually goes to either the south side of that alley easement or to the west side of it, based on where the lots are. So when you attach a 5-foot rear yard setback, which is the minimum required in this district, we know you can't build into the alleyway, and you really should have a setback from that alleyway so you can make sure you're not going to run into your neighbor when you come in and out of your garage, your parking space. I don't think that's going to be too onerous for the project. I think, certainly I think what they're showing here meets that standard. Okay, Catherine. So real quickly, the fees in lieu, as I mentioned, the inclusionary housing for that 1/3 of a unit. There's the fair contribution to schools. Open space. I noticed I left it in as far as a comment from Public Works, but that was from the previous case I was working on. There actually isn't a fee in lieu for sidewalks because they're building the sidewalks, is what I understand, curb gutter and sidewalks around the project. Okay. So we are recommending approval that it meets the standards for a major subdivision, and we've got a number of conditions. One is, again, to address the Xcel issues, so we know where, if any additional public utility easements need to be shown on that plat. In this case, with a major subdivision, we do a subdivision improvement agreement that talks about how those improvements will be done, how you guarantee them, how long it's going to take, so on and so forth. So that'll have to be done after the final plat is approved by council. And then a number of notes that there must be 2 inclusionary housing units actually built in the project. Can you go to the next slide? The fair contribution to school sites, the parks and trails and open space fee in lieu. And I showed the exhibit something to clarify what that rear yard looks like. And provide a note regarding access easements. Oh, yes. The city is not going to maintain that alleyway, and we're not going to maintain the retention basin. So that means they'll probably have to address it in CC&Rs that get recorded with the plat. And there will probably be some kind of homeowners association, property owners association, some kind of entity that's going to maintain that area. And then whatever else is in that subdivision improvement or housing agreement, and we'll put the reception number of where that gets recorded on the plat. Okay, I think we're getting to the last one. We have an architectural standard. You can't just duplicate the same front elevation. It has to be some variety. At least 1 in 5 has to be a different front elevation. That would apply in this case. Of course, water and sewer system development fees are going to be required, and kind of a continuing work with Excel and find a resolution to some of the issues. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission might have.
Glenn, on number 5, did you want to say prior to council?
Well, I addressed that in number 1.
Oh.
So specifically, because their other concern was the overhead
Okay,
power that runs along the south end of the site.
okay.
You have to follow up on that, Glenn. Is that put a lot of burden on the applicant, seeing as they don't control the schedule of Excel and then they're trying to get to city council in the soonest possible time?
It's possible. In fact, I was thinking about that today, and we may have the same condition when it goes to council.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that it gets recorded in the plat, and obviously needs to get resolved, but I don't know if the timing of that is such an important item to get before council.
Yeah.
So it accomplishes our goal as long as it's agreed to and platted.
Yeah.
But, so I would suggest we not make that condition before they go to council.
But number 1 doesn't say that, it just said, prior to council review,
Yeah.
I see, yeah.
Right.
I just think you could strike that and say the applicant will
Yeah.
work with Excel.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah,
But,
I would not severely object to that.
okay, let's just do that.
Very often, in these kind of situations with affordable housing, we say something about when the affordable units
Right,
are to be built,
right.
that the developer can't wait until the last 2 units.
Usually it's proportional.
Yeah, and so, I think very often we've said the first unit has to be, or they have to build 2, so in this case, it'd be the first and the 7th, or you split the difference and make it the 3rd and the 10th, but something to make sure that those are getting built.
I think the argument usually with the first is that, well, we'd like to get 2 sold first.
yeah.
And then we can kind of get into the, or some number. Anyway, we can hear from the applicant on that when we get there.
It's a good point. You don't want it to wait till last.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, but we also don't want to restrict them from
Right.
building units and selling to improve their cash flow and their business case, so.
I think in a couple other examples, we have required that the inclusionary housing unit be CO'd no later than the 6th unit, right, to line up with that 1 out of 6.
Yeah.
And there has been some other flexibility, though, especially if you're talking about duplexes or, multiple units.
That sounds like good language.
Yeah,
CO
so,
before 6.
yeah, I like it.
We'll
I'll
listen
add that
to the
to number
applicant,
2,
though.
maybe if the applicant.
Any other questions for staff?
No, thanks.
All right. Would you guys like to come up and applicant, come on up?
There's 3 of them.
Yeah. Jody, come on up.
Just to introduce myself,
4
I'm Jamie
of them.
Baker.
Excellent.
This is Aaron Payrus. And
I'm sorry, start again.
I'm Jamie Baker.
Okay.
My wife Joni. Aaron Payrus, we're partners in this project. And then this is our engineer, Nathan Curtis.
Great,
He did the development plan.
great.
Do you have,
I just wanted to speak to the discussion.
come up here.
Inclusionary.
Come
on up to the mic.
Yes, you
No,
are.
you need to be on TV.
You need to be on TV.
Be loud into the mic.
I just wanted to speak to the inclusionary units. I believe our intent at this point, when we're looking at this diagram, this is a small operation, but the two on the corner of Illinois and Teller, that's our hope. We're going to start there, and then we're hoping to build the next 4, the 2 doubles on Teller, and our idea is to propose that the 2 on the south lot of Teller would be our inclusionary units.
That
So
whole-
it
that whole
would
duplex.
correlate with unit 5 and 6.
Great,
That's our goal.
good.
And at this point in time, we are undecided if those will be rented or sold.
Okay. As long as
Those
they
will
meet the
be
guidelines, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Do you guys want to address the XL Energy issue at all, or how that's going? No?
I'll just say, we received those comments, maybe, recently, so we're
okay.
working through that with them. But outside of that, as far as engineering concerns, there's not really any major things. The utilities are all in surroundings, so there's no issue getting services to those properties. And then the stormwater, while it was tight, we were able to work through it with Gary Greiner and David Lady to make it work.
Great.
We're not really concerned about much on there.
One other thing that keeps getting used that sometimes doesn't set well with the public is these access easements that are on the south side and then going along the properties on Teller. Those are all within our property and they are considered private access. I think Glenn spoke that they would not be maintained by the city. Those are within our property and will be privately maintained. Correct.
That's
Not alleys.
not referred to as alleys, they are access easements.
Okay. yeah,
Good.
yeah.
So are these all going to be 2-bedroom, 2-bath? Tell me what the makeup is.
Right now, the plan is the plans are they're pretty much complete. For the 6 units on Teller, those are all 3-bedroom, 3 or 2.5-bath.
Great.
2-story, not exceeding, what are they? I think they're 27 or 29 feet tall. The first one is anyway. All of them will be slightly different. We're not into cookie cutter stuff.
Good.
The ones on Illinois Street are still in the development phase. They're going to be duplexes. They're going to be 15-foot wide each. But the plans are not, they're conceptual at this point.
Possibly smaller on that side.
They're skinnier for
Yeah,
sure.
And so maybe
Yep.
less bedrooms. I don't object to any of it. I was just
Right.
curious.
Yeah.
Good.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I actually have a question for the applicant. These are intended to be sold, is that correct?
Not, the first 4 definitely are going to be sold, the first 4 units. The inclusionary houses, it depends on what makes financial sense when we get to that point.
The reason I ask is the code in the inclusionary housing section does require that the IH units be proportional to the type of unit, type of market units.
Right.
So if it's an entirely for sale project, as Catherine pointed out to me, then those need to be for sale units. If it's a rental project, it should be rental units.
If it's mixed, one would be sold and one would be kept
Yes,
as a
there,
rental.
there can be that built into that inclusionary housing agreement.
Okay.
Any other questions for these guys? Stay close, we might.
I don't have anything.
I'm not going anywhere.
Brian, you good? Good. Good? Dan, you good? Kenny, you good?
All right.
Jeff, you good?
You guys, we'll get into discussion. Public input, is anybody here to speak to this?
I think we have one, don't we?
We do have a speaker.
Ellen Miller?
Kid.
I don't know why I brought this. I don't need it.
It's okay.
I'm Ellen Miller, and I live,
Can you go, sorry to interrupt, can you go ahead and thank you?
Yeah.
Is that what you needed?
Yes.
Is that what you
Exactly.
needed? Okay. I can usually be heard without a microphone, but I know
wanna
you
make
have
sure
to
you
record
get
it.
recorded, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. This is not my regular duty, so. I live up the street from this project, and I've known this area for a long time. I grew up in the area, not in town Salida, but I went to school here and everything. And I've lived in my house since 1970. And so I guess, and after the previous discussions on the other things you were considering, one of the concerns I had was the density. And obviously that was addressed several times in some of the other ones you were doing today, that we got to have density in order to afford them. Well, I still think it's a little tight for the area, the size of the area, and then, of course, my concern is traffic. It's a school. There's a school there. There's three. I mean, there's the middle school, there's the Head Start, or the younger ones, and then the high school. And right now, even when there's school functions, there's cars parked for 2 blocks from the high school down Illinois. And so with more cars there, there's going to be even less parking. And, like I say, it's one of those things, I guess. But anyway, and then I was concerned too from the map. I had it blown up so I could read part of it. And I was concerned about the access to the garages. And I think he referred to it as an alley. And I don't believe it is an alley, but I believe she clarified that by saying that it's on their property. The entrance is on their property, not an alley, because there is no alley there. It was vacated years ago, and the people who own on the other side, it's on their deed and title that it's been part of their property. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify those few things. Thank you for what you do. I don't look forward to dealing with all of you, but I'm not planning on doing any subdivision on my property at this time. So, but anyway, and to these people, I hope it works. I hope we can be neighbors. And I thank you guys. Like I say, I still, those things, the density, the traffic, and the parking, they're issues. And I hope that they can be dealt with satisfactorily for all of us, especially when parents are coming and picking up their children after school, and the people that pick up their children at Head Start or whatever they call that division right now. I don't keep up with a lot of that stuff, but anyway, I know where they are, know some of the people. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you for your patience all evening.
All right. Anybody online? Is that it? No. Yep. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public input, close the public hearing, and go to discussion.
Well, it does look like there's parking off the private use easement that should satisfy some of the concerns on Illinois. I think the intent is for the parking to be contained in the development. I think it's a really nice plan. And I like the idea that, you're not doing cookie cutter, and we need some 3 bedrooms, we need some 2 bedrooms, we need all of it. So I think I walk in that neighborhood all the time. Ellen, you might have seen me. And I think that this is appropriate for that area. And perhaps some school teachers can live there.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Oh, good.
Okay. All righty then, let's make a motion to recommend City Council approve the Shake and Roost major subdivision as it meets the review standards for a subdivision, subject to the conditions recommended by staff, with a couple of changes. Number 1, we're going to strike prior to council review and just start with the applicant will work with Excel. And the other one on number 2A, we will add the inclusionary housing, at least one inclusion, the first inclusionary housing unit to be CO'd no later than the 6th market rate unit. All right, anything else?
Sounds about right.
Sure, Kenny? Okay, that's my motion.
Second.
Going head and head all night.
I know.
All right, we have a motion and a second
listening.
to recommend the planning commission to recommend the council. Fine. I'm just going to repeat
Eat
it.
some sausage.
Yeah. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second to approve with the conditions as stated with 2 additional. Any further discussion?
Okay. Fillet,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes.
Colby,
Yes.
Kribel,
Yes.
Dockery,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Layton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, get to work.
Congratulations. Get it done.
All right, updates.
Not too much. Got a little bit more progress on the South Arc neighborhood. The consultants, engineers for design of utilities. There was a bunch of interviews done last week, and a firm has been selected that needs to be brought to council. And we're in the process of finalizing the contracts for the funding, so that all plays together. We can't have them under contract until we have the grant funding under contract. But there is certainly movement on that, which is great. We plan to bring to the next meeting, we'll have a work session on top of the regular meeting. It'll be following the regular meeting, because we just can't get enough of you all.
We love it.
And
We're so happy.
we'll be discussing some bylaws.
Good.
At that point, we'll bring some drafts, examples from other communities to discuss. And then with the idea of bringing back a finalized joint bylaws for you all to approve at some later date. And then the meeting after that, we hope to bring some additional information around inclusionary housing, some of the discussion points that you asked us
The
to bring.
ADU thing
Yep.
in particular?
Yep.
Yeah,
And
good.
a couple other ones as
So
well.
when will, so the 22nd is the next
22nd.
meeting, the
Yep.
regular meeting?
July
Right.
22nd.
And then the 13th? Is that right? The August 13th?
That would be a work session. I don't know if we're gonna, if we need to, for the AD.
For the
IH,
IH
you wanna do
discussion.
August 13th?
To be determined. We'll
Okay.
get back to you on that. I want to.
Sure, and let us know.
Yeah, because we need to look to see what's lining up for
Either way,
August.
so it'll either be the 13th would be a work session, or the 26th would be our next regular meeting in August?
Correct, and depending on how much is on that schedule, we
Right.
could either combine it, or if there's nothing, we could make that the
Okay,
work session. So
sure.
we have some options.
Thanks, and thanks for remembering to bring that up.
Yep.
Because I know we've all been thinking about it.
Yeah.
A very full agenda tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But
How's land
unanimous.
use code
But
coming?
unanimous, I know, we're good, right?
Honestly, not a ton of progress, but with all the staff that we have on board and starting to be able to spread that work out, we are looking at being able to free up some time to really start focusing on it. Really.
Are you talking about the land use?
Land use code, yep. Really trying to get stuff off of Catherine's plate and my plate specifically to be able to put a lot more energy into that, so.
New people, new energy.
Right. Delighted to have all our new people.
Did, Catherine's asking if you all remember whether the minutes got approved?
Yes, I did.
They did, didn't
Was
they?
quite a few hours ago.
Okay, all right, we'll go back to the tape and figure out who did what.
24 thing with it.
24,
yeah.
24.
I seem to remember there being that as well.
But thank you for checking.
Motion to adjourn.
There was nothing.
Second.
All right, motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
For sure.
Anybody else want this? I don't have to have this. I mean, I'll just eat this part and I'll bring it back in the next meeting.
Right.